All right, so today we're going to talk about Sphenisciformes. These are the penguins. The first species we have is the king penguin, Aptenodytes patagonicus. This is a species of least concern that eats fish, particularly it eats lanternfish and also squid. The king penguin is its breeding range is subantarctic on various subantarctic islands from the Falklands to Macquarie Island. So the Falklands are here and Macquarie Island's over here, and so all of the subantarctic islands between them are potential breeding locations. In the non-breeding season, this is a pelagic species, so it heads out into the open ocean. Anytime you see this pelagic marker on one of these slides, it's referring to the fact that these species will disperse out into open ocean at some point. Um, their dispersal during the non-breeding season is tremendous. Their trips can be over 10,000 kilometers. That's one of the record measured distances that one of these species traveled, one of these individuals, I should say, traveled. Um, and so they are a species of high dispersal. Their genetics have been studied in terms of the genetics of the diversity and variation in the genetics of these different islands across the range. And an interesting thing was found that there's not a lot of variability. The genetic compositions on different islands are very similar, which is surprising. But it's maybe not as surprising when you think about how strong of a disperser these individuals are. Their ability to, move tremendous distances between islands means you're constantly getting genetic information from different islands moving back and forth, keeping things relatively stable. And so, even though you have a bunch of different breeding colonies on these different islands, you can almost think of their breeding range as one uniform population because from year to year, genetics are moving around um, very, very strongly between the different populations. Okay, so next we have the emperor penguin. That's Aptenodytes forsteri. It is a near-threatened species, primarily affected by climate change impacts, which affect the ice sheets that the breeding colonies stay on. Um, and also, they're affected by human disturbance primarily through survey work. So when humans are doing surveys of these populations, they fly helicopters over, and that can disturb these populations. They consume primarily fish, including nototheniids, also krill and squid. They have a circumpolar distribution from 66 to 78 degrees south. They are a marine pelagic species that breed on coastal ice or coastline, um, and they prefer uh, breeding colony locations where you have a sort of elevational gradient that buffers wind. Their movements are poorly studied, but they uh, are thought to most likely disperse and maintain a sort of pelagic lifestyle post breeding. The Adelie penguin is Pygoscilus adeliae. This is a species of least concern that primarily consumes krill, though does also consume some amount of fish, amphipods, and cephalopods. So, unlike the king and emperor, this is a much more crustacean focused, krill focused diet. These guys also have a circumpolar distribution. Primarily, though, their distribution is uh, in Antarctica. It's still circumpolar, but it's most of them are found specifically in Antarctica. They are associated with marine ice and rocky coasts, and also polynyas um, when when they're relatively farther from a coast. And so, if you're not familiar with the polynya, all a polynya is a permanently liquid water area that is surrounded by ice. And it's not very intuitive because in that part of the world, Most of the time, you're like, well, the ice should or the water should be frozen. Um, but there are a few different phenomena that create these pockets of liquid water surrounded by ice. And they are dispersing, known to move north to better feeding grounds after breeding. The Gentoo penguin is another Pygoscelis papua. It's a species of least concern that consumes krill and fish. Their diet varies across their range in a north to south direction, um, where some populations consume more krill and some more fish. And then they also supplement their diet with crustaceans, cephalopods, and polychaetes. There are 4 subspecies, and they are found from the Arctic Peninsula to about 60 degrees south. They are marine primarily, with sedentary subantarctic populations and migratory Antarctic populations. It's basically if it's very, very, very cold Antarctic, you've got to move up into subantarctic waters, um, and so you have to migrate. The chinstrap penguin is Pygoscelis antarcticus, is a species of least concern that primarily eats Antarctic krill. It does rarely eat other crustaceans and fish. It is a circumpolar distribution, though the region around the South Atlantic is where you find most of the individuals. So that's in this area. They are marine and they are a relatively ice intolerant species, so they only hang out in places where ice is between 10 and 30% ice cover. Um, and in fact, they nest typically on rocky coasts that have virtually no ice. And they are a dispersive species. The little blue penguin, or what is often just called the little penguin, is Eudyptula. So we're in a new genus. Eudyptula minor is a species of least concern. Um, they consume pelagic shoaling fish and also some cephalopods. Just called the little blue penguin, of course. Just you can look at it for one. It's the smallest penguin. It's really, really small, and also um, it does have a bluish cast to it. The color is definitely bluish. Um, little penguin. There are 6 subspecies of little penguin in Australia, New Zealand, and also in the New Zealand territory of the Chatham Islands, which is this little island out here. Um, they are temperate marine species that nest on sandy and rocky islands and are generally sedentary. The African penguin, Spheniscus demersus, is a critically endangered species that is susceptible to problems that arise from commercial overfishing, obviously affecting food availability, human disturbance, um, egg collecting, feral cats that will kill the young, and historically they were pretty negatively affected by uh, oil spill problems. That has since, as far as I know, is not an issue. But it had a negative impact in the past, which resonates into the current population. They consume pelagic schooling fish and cephalopods. They are located in coastal South Africa, marine. Generally, the adults at least are considered sedentary. The younger individuals move around more, and they do have overall a broader coastal distribution in winter than they do during the breeding season. The Humboldt penguin, Spheniscus humboldti, is a vulnerable species, vulnerable to fishing net mortality issues, illegal capture and trade, human disturbance, and overfishing. So some of these penguins, and I believe, if I recall, this is one of the penguins where this is the case. They are caught, killed, and used as bait in crab pots, which is just it's a way of fishing for crab. And so that is one of the issues that arises with these species where that occurs. Um, in terms of diet, they consume pelagic schooling fish and squid. They're found on the coast of South America, the Pacific coast, around along Chile and Peru, and their name actually comes from the Humboldt Current that is found along that region um, of coastal South America. That's why they're the Humboldt penguin. They are marine. They nest on rocky shores and islands with guano deposits. That should ring a bell from the previous lecture where we talked briefly about guano islands. So they will associate with some of those different guano islands where they will actually burrow into the guano and build their nests in the guano. Their movements overall are fairly poorly studied. The Magellanic penguin, Spheniscus magellanicus, is a species of least concern that consumes fish, cephalopods, and crustaceans. You can distinguish this penguin. So these Spheniscus penguins look kind of the same. You can distinguish this penguin in a couple ways that is fairly helpful. Um, look at the amount of pink around the bill. That's going to separate the Magellanic from the Humboldt. There's your Humboldt. Extensive pink. Not that extensive pink, right? It doesn't, not this huge base of extensive pink. And then if you want to separate the Magellanic from the African, there's a white line that comes from below the eye down to the chin. And if we look at the African, you can see there is no white line. Another thing you'll notice on the African is the way the chest is marked is very, very different in the two species, and that's usually a good indicator. Let's see here. So the Magellanic penguin is found in the coastal regions of southern South America, including Chile, Argentina, and the Falklands. It is a marine and pelagic species nesting on beaches, sand dunes, and a bunch of other, to a less extent, a bunch of other habitats that are associated with the coast of that area, and is migratory, moving north outside of breeding season. Then we have the macaroni penguin. So now we're in Eudiptes. Eudiptes are the probably of the various genera of penguins we're looking at in the tag. I think these are the ones that are the most difficult to tell apart. At least that's been my experience working with students. But I can show you a couple tips right now that'll help sort this out. These are the crested penguins, these Eudiptes penguins. They have these crests. Note that the crest on a macaroni penguin meets broadly over the base of the bill. That's very helpful. It is a fairly rich color as well. It's like a deeply yellow, almost yellow-orange. So this is Eudiptes chrysolophus. It is a vulnerable species. It is subject to various factors that affect its food availability, and two of the big ones are commercial fishing and climate change. These guys consume krill and other crustaceans. They also consume some small amount of fish. They're distributed on the subantarctic islands of the South Atlantic and South Indian Oceans, and also throughout the Antarctic Peninsula. They are marine and pelagic, with colonies typically being found on scree or lava flows. So scree is like scattered rock debris. That's how you can kind of think of scree. And they are dispersive and, again, thought to be pelagic outside of the breeding season. All right, the southern rockhopper. So this is we have three Eudyptes species. This is the Eudyptes species that just throws everything off, mostly because of the taxonomic problems that this species has that make it extra confusing. But first, just in terms of comparing the crest to the macaroni penguin's crest, note that the crest doesn't meet broadly over the bill, right? It's just sort of a line over the eye, and then a little tiny crest that's fairly light color. So that's the southern rockhopper's crest. They're very distinct, I think, the two crests. So this says AKA Western Rockhopper, but it's actually more complicated than that. It's also AKA the Eastern Rockhopper, because the Southern Rockhopper has been taxonomically recognized by, at least by the authority that I go on for taxonomy, which is Birds of the World, has been split into two different species. So you have Eudyptes chrysocome. That would be the tag species that is listed as the southern rockhopper. It's also the scientific name for what is now recognized as the western rockhopper. And then Eudyptes philholi, which would be the eastern rockhopper. Both of those two species, chrysocome and philholi, together represent what was once just called the southern rockhopper. So what does that mean? On the test, it's the southern rockhopper and it's Eudyptes chrysocome. And the reason for that is because that's what the tag says. But to be up to date with our current taxonomic understanding, at least as far as Birds of the World is concerned, which again, I would state to be one of the best authorities that we have on avian taxonomy, you would split them into two different species, Eudyptes chrysocome and Eudyptes philholi. Interestingly, the next species, which is called the northern rockhopper we'll look at, was also at some point folded into this complex taxonomic group. This species is vulnerable due to human impacts, climate change, overfishing, and interestingly, there's an interesting note about the fact that increasing seal populations have had and do have a potentially negative impact on the species populations because the seals eat them. Their primary diet is krill. They also eat amphipods, fish, and cephalopods. So the southern rockhopper is found on islands off the coast of Chile and Argentina and also the Falklands. They are marine and pelagic, nesting on scree slopes, rocky shores, lava flows, and areas of dense tussock grasses. And they are dispersive. And then here's our northern rockhopper. This is the last of the three Eudyptes, right? So the macaroni penguin has the big, sort of bright yellow unibrow where the crest meets over the base of the bill. The southern rockhopper has the really small crest, slightly colored. And the northern rockhopper, which is also called Moseley's rockhopper, Eudyptes moseley, has something in between. It's got a fairly big, prominent crest that looks similar to the macaroni penguin's crest. It's also fairly brightly colored, but it does not meet in the middle over the base of the bill. So the Moseley's rockhopper is an endangered species. The reasons for this are poorly studied, mostly unknown. Some things that are known to affect this species, though, are bait collection, and that is the example I was talking about where some of these species are collected as bait for crab fisheries. Historically, egg collection, overfishing, a problem with feral pig predation through some of the range of the species, and then general disturbance. Their diet is mostly crustacean-based krill and amphipods. They do also eat some fish and cephalopods. And the northern rockhopper is found in Cunha, Tristan da Cunha, and Gow Island, also in the South Indian Oceans and Amsterdam Island, and I should say Saint Paul Island, not Saint Paul Island. Um, Basically, these few islands in the Atlantic and South Indian Oceans. Uh, and they are marine pelagic species that nest on rocky beaches and also in areas of tussock grasses. So those are the species um, for this Sphenisciformes tag. The really the only, I think, truly difficult ones to tell apart are those Eudiptes species. Other than that, uh, that's all I got for you today. So if you don't have any, or if you have any questions, of course, as I always say, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to clarify anything in the PowerPoint. Have a good day.